Was Nigel Farage. Thank you, Jane. And Nigel, that no introduction needed. That kind of sums up what you've been trying to say as well today in your article in the Telegraph. Jane in Plymouth says, Nigel, please come back.
Well, let's just sort of look at the big issue first. I mean, Jane is right when she says it's like a roller coaster ride. One day you think, oh, it sounds rather good. The next day you feel down in the dumps about it. But I do think what happened last week was actually a decisive shift. You know, we've had a cabinet that have been at war with each other very publicly over many aspects of Brexit, in particular the Chancellor, against Boris, David Davis, Liam Fox. But suddenly, up pops a junior trade minister called Lord Pryor, which I bet nobody actually listening to this show's ever heard of, but never mind. And up pops this, well, I think we've barely heard of any of it, really, haven't we? And what do you think? What do you think back, John, to when you were a kid? Whether you like them or not, our politicians were giant personalities and big figures.
Absolutely.
Now, in general, they're a pretty nondescript bunch with the odd exception. Anyway, up pops this Pryor bloke, and he's speaking behind closed doors to a meeting of people from the tech industry and the insurance business. And he says, don't worry, boys, it's all going to be fine. You're going to have no trouble at all accessing any labour you want from the European market post-Brexit. And I thought, well, hang on a second. This bloke's gone too far. Surely Theresa May is going to sack him. And then I find that Michael Gove, one of the leading voices for Brexit, suddenly is saying, oh, well, actually, we have to think about the economy. I mean, coming out with the arguments that were the ones that were made by the Remain side, and now peace has broken out in the Conservative cabinet. There is now a consensus agreement that free movement will continue for at least 2 years after Brexit. But it sounds to me like it's not going to be 2 years. It sounds to me like it's going to be 4 years or maybe 5 years. And, let's say, even at the best possible analysis that it's 2 years post-Brexit until free movement ends, that will be 5 years after we voted. That's the first point. And the second point is millions of people voted Conservative because they were told by Theresa May that net migration will be cut to tens of thousands. So I think this is a real kick in the teeth for Conservative voters and for Brexit voters.
So this is a betrayal. That's what you're saying, yes?
Well, I'm saying that this is the first thing that I've seen that begins to smell of a betrayal. And I say that because the dominant issue in Brexit was about taking back control of our borders because of a feeling that, frankly, too many people are coming to the country in too short a space of time.
But, Nigel, they keep telling us, the establishment elite, that we didn't know what we were voting for in Brexit, and that is why we may even need a second referendum. We weren't sure what we were voting for.
Wow.
However, I was pretty clear, and so were my listeners, and no doubt you were, and your listeners too.
Oh, listen, there was no doubt, there's no question. There was no question what it was about. In fact, the odd thing about the referendum was that those on the Remain camp and those on the Leave camp both agreed that the consequences of voting to leave would be that we leave the single market and we take back control. And whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing is irrelevant. Both sides understood that very, very clearly.
Okay, you did say that you'd kind of retired from frontline politics, but you would come back if you felt we were being sold out on Brexit. Is this the time when you start to think about coming back to frontline politics? I mean, I've had loads of emails today, people saying, please tell him to come back. Please tell him we need him. This guy, Carl, says, can you tell Nigel this? I was never politically motivated until I was mesmerised by what he had to say. I joined my first political party, UKIP, because of him. I feel betrayed by the current political elite, and I think, apart from a few notable exceptions, they are all traitors. I also feel let down and disappointed with Nigel. He was my great hope, but I had my hopes dashed when he resigned. Please ask him to come back.
Well, my answer is, it's very sweet of him, but, UKIP did have 25 years of my life. It's quite a long time, really. I haven't walked away, John. I'm still leading a group in the European Parliament, and don't worry, I will be doing battle there over the course of the next 18 months or so. And I'm commenting and I'm writing and I'm doing all sorts of stuff. As far as getting back into frontline UK politics is concerned, well, it's not exactly top of my bucket list, believe me. It's not exactly fun. It's not exactly what I want to do with my life, but I stand by my previous comments. If we get let down and betrayed on Brexit, then I would have no choice but to throw myself back into it. And what we've seen in the last week is the worst indicator yet. So let's see how this pans out. But I feel more pessimistic about getting the right Brexit today than I did this time last week.
And just before you go then, what do you think of the EU are making of this? They must be laughing their socks off, because it means the deal that they're going to get is going to be great, isn't it? We're weakening our position all the time.
I don't think we seem to really understand how to negotiate with these people. I've watched countries like France get what they want out of the EU in negotiations. They do it by being tough, bullheaded and threatening. And here we are giving away many of our best cards, barely as the whole thing has begun. So, yeah, I don't at this moment in time feel we're handling this very well. I sense what's really going on here is the big businesses who traditionally have backed and funded the Conservative Party are pressurizing the negotiating team massively. And they're saying, look, concede for a few years on free movement, concede on money, and try and get a tariff-free deal. And that, I think, is where this negotiation is going. So we could finish up, I hope we don't, but we could finish up in 2 years' time, having got Brexit, yes, but effectively having it in name only. So I'm watching that. I can reassure all your listeners and your texters and tweeters, John, I am watching this like a hawk.
Sure. How crazy when the most powerful man in the world yesterday got out of bed and said he's going to do a tremendous trade deal with us, Donald J. Trump. How crazy that these people are selling our country down to the EU elite, Nigel. How stupid are they?
Well, what is amazing, actually, if you take 2 steps back and think about it, is just how powerful our hand is. It's really strong. It's strong globally because you've got the Japanese Prime Minister, Abe, you've got Trump, you've got the Australians, dozens of countries all over the world queuing up and saying, let's get a better, closer relationship, which is great. And in Germany, there is now a bit of a kickback against the government from German industry, who are saying to Merkel and others, for goodness sake, do a sensible deal with Britain because it's in our interests too. So I think we're not in a bad position unless we give way to the unelected bully boys in Brussels.
Nigel, great talking to you. Look after yourself. Thank you very, very much.
Lovely. Thanks, John.
Indeed.
You didn't, frankly, have the balls to put country before party.